Alright guys, so a versus video. We're going to talk about Juggernaut today. Juggernaut is a cool character from the comics, and if you are a Marvel Legends collector, you like, your Marvel figures, that kind of thing, whether it's Legends Select, whatever it is, he's a figure usually people like to have in their collection. Even if you're not a huge X-Men fan, he's just a pretty cool figure to have. Now I have three of the more popular, or the most popular, I would say, Juggernaut figures out here. We've got Marvel Legends Toybiz, we've got Marvel Legends Hasbro, and then of course back at the back we've got Marvel Select. This guy right here up front is Spider-Man Classics from back in the early 2000s. He's one I had in my collection. He's probably not one you would consider really in your collection, especially if you're only going to have one Juggernaut. He's still bigger than even most modern Hasbro Marvel Legends, but he's not huge as you kind of usually want Juggernaut to be. But he's a cool figure. You can pick him up usually for about anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks, depending on whether or not he actually has his helmet on. You'll see a lot of these floating around on eBay and places where people have lost the little helmet. This one I think I paid about 25 bucks for. I think it was on eBay. I don't honestly remember. But it's just a cool little figure. I like him. Again, not really one I'm going to put too much into the comparison here just because size-wise, I mean, he's bigger than, you got a Bucky Cap Cyclops there, but certainly not how most of us like to picture Juggernaut. So we're going to kind of put him off to the side here, and we're going to focus on these three right here because these are kind of the main ones that we really talk about when we're talking about comparing Juggernaut figures. So let's just start from the beginning. Let's start with Toybiz right here. So this is kind of the first really, I think, big, bulky Juggernaut that we ever had, certainly in the Marvel Legends line. So we've got all the articulation. This one has the old school Toybiz articulation. So you've got articulated toes, you've got the articulated fingers, you've got the articulated wrists, you've got single jointed elbows, double jointed knees, you've got decent swivel and back and forth on your ankles. You've got bicep rotation. You've got a removable helmet on this one here that you do want to be careful that you don't lose, but overall it stays on pretty well. You've got the ball joint hips, kind of old school, and yes, he looks like a gorilla. Whether it was this figure, Hulk, Apocalypse, a lot of those early old school, Toybiz Marvel Legends, when they made big hulking characters, they made them with huge, out of proportion arms that kind of look ridiculous. That being said, it's got great paint apps, it's a great sculpt, there's just something about these old Toybiz figures that I really like, and it works well even to this day. And if you look at it just from a size comparison standpoint, like, it's still a big figure. Like, it's still considerably bigger than your standard Marvel Legend, and it works. It works in a display. Now, oddly enough, he's kind of gone up in price lately, I've noticed, as I've been kind of floating around the internet and looking different places. It used to be you could pick him up for 25 to 30 bucks, probably not too far off from this guy over here. Lately, I've been seeing him, once you factor in shipping, pushing between $40 and $50. Maybe it's just because there's not a lot of them out right now. I don't know if there's some sort of resurgence in the popularity of this particular figure. I don't know how to explain it, especially when you have much more modern figures out, i.e. the other two we've got here that we're going to talk about. I don't know why this one seems to be going up at least a little bit in price, 10 bucks give or take. But it's a great figure with a great sculpt. It's got basically all the articulation you would need out of a Juggernaut figure. It's obviously not up to modern standards, but still a really cool figure that I really like a lot. Alright, so then we've got this one here. This, of course, is the Hasbro Build-A-Figure. Now, whether you're going the Build-A-Figure route, which, of course, mine, obviously, you can tell is missing the belt, or you're going the 2-pack Colossus route, whatever it is, they're both basically the same figure. The only difference is the paint is a little bit different in that you've got a little bit lighter color scheme on the 2-pack version. You don't have the textured helmet on the 2-pack version like you've got on here, and then normally on the 2-pack version, just like this one, it doesn't come with a belt. Mine just doesn't have a belt. I pieced this thing together and just never got a belt for it. Really, the difference in those two is just going to be personal preference. I like the Build-A-Figure better, mostly just because I do like the darker color scheme. Sculpt's exactly the same, articulation is exactly the same, and I also like the textured helmet, which the 2-pack doesn't have. They both sell for around the same price, which is $50 give or take, depending on shipping. So they could range from anywhere from $50 to $60, depending on where you pick it up locally, that kind of thing. Buy it on eBay, whatever. $50 to $60. He is the most expensive Juggernaut in this comparison, but he's also the one that I think, you know, the most people have sought out, because he's a good Juggernaut. He goes perfectly with modern Marvel Legends and even older Marvel Legends. He's a great size, he's a great sculpt, he's got great articulation, good proportions, good details. In general, just a great figure. And even though it does carry a little bit more of a hefty price than, let's say, the Toybiz one that's sitting next to it, it's still a really good figure and definitely worth the price if you're looking for just a good all-around Juggernaut in your collection. I think this one, hands down, is just a great choice for just about anybody. All right, now let's talk about this big beast over here. I think this guy weighs in at about 2.5 pounds, if I remember correctly. He's huge. He's very, very detailed as far as his sculpt goes. Now, as far as articulation goes, he actually has less articulation than either the Hasbro or the Toybiz Marvel Legends, but for a Juggernaut figure, he actually has really good articulation, and especially for his size. You've got single jointed elbows and knees. You've got basic articulation in the ankles. You've got bicep swivels. You've got good swivel in the arms. Head does turn a little bit, but not much. And he's just a big, hulking figure. He's the one, actually, that I think looks really, really good on a Marvel Legends display, just because he's just so big. He's just a huge hulking figure. And this guy runs, right now, you can actually pick him up on Amazon with free shipping for, I think, $32.99. So $33 you can pick this guy up, because he's been re-released. He's an older figure that's Marvel Select, which I love it when they do this. They re-release older figures for a standard retail price so that you can pick up some of these figures that you want without having to pay ridiculous collector's prices. Some people who are collectors who like to sell their stuff don't like that. I, as a collector, appreciate that. And I just think he's a great figure, and I love the price. Definitely a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to this guy right here. So, when comparing these figures, look, they're all going to look great on a Marvel Legends display, since that is what most of us collect. I do believe that in the 5 to 7 inch scale figures, Marvel Legends is the most collected toy line out there, period. So a lot of us have those as a bulk of our collection, if not all of it. And any of these three are going to look great in that collection. They all scale well with other Marvel Legends figures, or any 6-inch figures, really. They all look good of varying sizes. And I think each of these three, let's not forget this guy over here, he is still cool, but each of these main three right here, I think each shine, for me personally, in one particular area. And so I want to go through that. So my personal pick for my personal favorite Juggernaut is the Toybiz. I just love this thing. He's got, I think, the best sculpt out of all of them. I actually kind of dig the monkey arms and the ridiculous proportions, and while he is not as big as the other two, I think, as far as what I remember from reading the comics back in the day, he still scales really well when you can get him to stand up. He still scales really, really well with your Marvel Legends. He's still a good-sized figure. And, yeah, he just doesn't want to stand up. He's still a really good-sized figure. He's not the biggest, but he's my personal favorite. I even like that you've got the veins and things that have been painted in. I like the removable helmet. I like the straps coming over the shoulders. I like the sculpt. I like the huge feet. This is my personal favorite. And again, he's kind of middle of the road when it comes to price, 40 bucks, give or take, depending on what shipping is. But that's my personal favorite. Now, the one that I think is probably the one that is going to fit in most people's just kind of general collection is going to be the Hasbro. I think the Hasbro is a perfect size for most people's collections. I think there are now 2 versions of him out, and while he is the most expensive on, in this comparison, I think he's going to be the one that fits in with most people's collection. He's got probably the best articulation here. Because there's 2 versions, you can go with the lighter painted version with the less detailed helmet or the more detailed version. They both run about the same, so it doesn't really matter. You're getting the same articulation, you're getting the same sculpt. They're great figures. And I think just in general, when it comes to what's going to fit for most people, this is probably the best choice. Now, when it comes to value, hands down, it is the Marvel Select. 2.5 pounds of plastic for 33 bucks with free shipping, with really good articulation for what this figure is, especially if you compare him to some of the other Marvel Select figures out there, like some of the Hulk figures and Abomination and some of the other large figures, even the new Titanium Man. He actually has better articulation than some of those figures. And so again, for the price, for under $35, hands down the value play here is to go with the biggest, chunkiest, most standout figure for your shelf, and that would be, of course, the Marvel Select. So we've got personal preference from me, we've got best value, and we've got what I think is probably, in general, what's going to go with most people's collections. And, of course, we got the odd man out right there. I still love him. He's not very big, doesn't have good articulation, but still like this guy. So there you go. There's my quick little Toybiz versus Hasbro versus Marvel Select Juggernaut. Hope you enjoyed it. Got any questions, comments, leave it down below, and we'll talk to you guys later.